Good afternoon. Um, bit echoey, bit more bass, I think, bit more bass, a bit less echo, if that's possible. So we are here at the council's cabinet, which will be webcast. At the moment, it sounds as if the council house is being knocked down. It is sort of, in the sense that there are some adjustments next door, but hopefully it won't interfere with your enjoyment of this afternoon's proceedings. I've got to bring to your attention that there's no expected fire alarm today, but if there is, please follow the fire and emergency procedures and leave via the nearest fire exit. And if that banging continues, there'll probably be an additional fire that we weren't expecting. Could you use your microphone when addressing the meeting, please, and have it switched off when you're not using it, and make sure that your mobile devices are turned to silent, which I haven't, and I know will. So I'm going to ask if there are any apologies today. We've had Councillor Penberthy, I think. Is that right?
Through you, Chair. Yes, just apologies from Councillor Penberthy.
And I am going to ask Councillor Lowry to introduce Councillor Penberthy's items today. Are there any declarations of interest in respect of any of the items on the agenda? None, thank you. I'm going to go to the minutes of the previous meeting now. I'd like to propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September be signed as a correct record. Is that all agreed? Thank you. Now move to item 4 on the agenda, which is questions from the public. We've got one from Mr. Dart. So if I think I'll go that way. I think that's the first one I've got, Mr. Dart. So on the 11th of September 23, Plymouth City Council confirmed that of the 2.75 million capital funding agreed by the Cabinet for the Brickfields redevelopment, only about 20% of the funding approved will be paid as grant funding to Plymouth Argyle. Please confirm what the remaining 80% is spent on. That's the question. It's a long answer. Is that all right if I read it? Thanks to Mr. Dart for his follow-up question. The redevelopment of the Brickfield site really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to secure significant investment in sport, health and wellbeing services that will be benefit not just the people of Devonport, but residents all across the city and indeed visitors from outside Plymouth as well. Mr. Dart's question asks about the funding which the Council is providing. Before I explain how we're spending our funding, it's worth highlighting that the Council's commitment to provide 2.75 million has helped to secure over £18 million of funding from our partners at Plymouth Argyle Football Club and Plymouth Argyle Community Trust. Together with Plymouth Albion and Devonport Community Leisure Limited, who will be the voice of the local community, we'll be creating a new home for elite and grassroots sport and new health and wellbeing facilities that will be the envy of other towns and cities in the southwest. Apart from the funding which we are providing to Plymouth Argyle to support the work they'll also be doing at Brickfields, the council funding will also be used for the following. We'll be providing a brand new hockey pitch at Stoke Damrell Community College to replace the current pitch, which is worn out and has been out of use for some time. It's nice, isn't it? We'll also be providing the Pétanque Club with a new home at Stonehouse Creek. This will give them a new playing facility with dedicated parking and access to changing facilities and toilets. I'll ask you as a Pétanque player what changing facilities you need for Pétanque in a minute. We'll also be carrying out improvements to the existing stand at the athletics track. And we've made provision for ongoing maintenance of the athletics track as well. Now, we're also supporting Devonport Community Leisure Trust in their new role as chair of the Brickfields Governing Board and with their ongoing work with the local community. How's that? So we've got another question, it's also to me, from Mr. Black. And Mr. Black would like to know, how does the leader intend to improve connectivity to Plymouth? Does this include the additional railway line through North Devon and Tavistock and extending the M5 to Plymouth? The Council remains committed to improving connectivity to Plymouth as set out in policy SPT 8 of the South West Devon Joint Local Plan, which includes supporting the ongoing investment that enhances the resilience of the rail network to extreme weather events and delivers improvements to capacity, frequency and journey times. After nearly 10 years since storms washed away a section of the track at Dawlish, there is still no firm commitment from government to complete all 5 phases of work needed to make the coastal route resilient. Even the announcement by the Prime Minister that the promised investment that the South West would be getting from Council and HS2 were only illustrative, you'll remember he clarified that last week, and not meant as pleasures. Plymouth deserves firm, concrete proposals, not just illustrations, with a commitment to funding of all 5 phases of the work, and the Council will continue to campaign for this until it's achieved. Similarly, the Council support any measures that would lead to the reopening of the northern route between Plymouth and Exeter via Tavistock and Oakhampton. The Council is therefore currently working in partnership with stakeholders to achieve the next stage of that ambition by securing the opening of the rail lane to allow journeys once again between Plymouth and Tavistock. There are no proposals to extend the M5 west of Exeter, but the Council will continue to make the case through its membership of the Peninsula Transport Subnational Transport Body for the investment in the strategic road network, ensuring the A38 is modernised to improve safety and journey time reliability to meet the needs of users. Okay, and I think it is worth remembering that there's a lot of hot air last week when Mr. Sunak announced the resilience stuff, but you'll remember it was Prime Minister David Cameron, that's 4 prime ministers ago, that said when the line went down that they would do whatever it took to make it resilient, which is of course what they haven't done, is done everything it took. We're still some way from resilience of the Penzance to Paddington line. Finally, is a question to Councillor Chris Penberthy from George Wheeler. Am I answering this now? Because all right. Would you provide the following information about all the public toilets owned and operated by the City Council in Plymouth, the location, the capacity and the charge to use the facility, please? Now, Councillor Penberthy would normally take this, but as he's not here, we're going to send the answer to Mr. Wheeler in due course. Obviously, we've got to clarify what we mean by capacity. Is that in litres or is that people? Do we know? We don't know. Right, okay. If I could then go to Chair's urgent business. Is there any urgent business? There's none. Thank you very much. And then we go to leaders' announcements. So I'll just do that. Most of the announcements that come from Dave Draffin's part of the organisation will be given by the cabinet members themselves, but I've got a few that I wanted to share with you. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that on the National Marine Park, since we last updated cabinet, we have now submitted the £22 million round 2 bid to the Heritage Fund, along with its 40 appendices. I wanted to update cabinet about what happens next. We have a date scheduled for mid-November for the trustees of the National Lottery to visit us and see that our project's close up. I'll be leading this with Andy Lugger, because we've done this cross-party and we're going to continue to do that. Our detailed proposal will then go before the National Lottery Board in December, and we hope that we can then start again in earnest in January. I'll keep you all closely updated on that. What I can tell you is that the proposals that we have been making have gone down well with partners and, most important of all, the public. I wanted to say something about cruise ships and visiting ships. This is sort of linked to the National Marine Park as well, I guess. I just wanted to mention that you've probably seen more cruise ships and visiting vessels in the Sound this year than in recent memory. We've also had many super yachts attending, including 2 just for the national fireworks. The El Galleon visited from Spain and the Waverley ocean-going paddle steamer just last week. And today, Richard Allen from Catdown has announced that we've got the Waverley back in next year, which is fantastic news. We've also had more commercial shipping lately, a real upward tick in demand. It's not happened by accident. But it is part of the work we've done jointly with Catwater Harbour Commissioners and Richard Allen. Richard really is a dynamic chief executive, and along with Destination Plymouth, we're promoting Plymouth as a destination for shipping. And we're also supporting Catwater to undertake a feasibility into further expansion as part of the shared prosperity funding, along with our first ever port strategy. So expect a lot more of this. I want to talk about the Celtic Array. Now I know we had that misfire by the government in terms of the licensing for offshore, but we are continuing to do a huge amount of work on the opportunity for floating offshore wind, sometimes known as flow. We had a shout out from the Labour Party conference from Rachel Reeves about offshore wind and the potential for Plymouth, which is great news. Just to give you a sense of the opportunity, there's going to be multiple football-sized pitched platforms anchored to the seabed in the Celtic Sea with Eiffel Tower-sized wind turbines and buildings on them. Plymouth's port capability and marine ecosystem gives us a unique opportunity to pitch for this work. Not the building of them, the servicing of them, really. Since September, we've already hosted a number of potential investors looking to use Plymouth's facilities, supported by our inward investment team. And I'll be opening the first ever Flow conference later this month at the Box to showcase the opportunities to businesses here in Plymouth, right? We're also working with the Freeport and ABP on this opportunity nationally. A little bit about fishing. We've been supporting the fishing industry while the Environment Agency and Sutton Harbour Holdings undertake works to the lock gates, and access to the harbour has been restricted. Officers of this council have spent a huge amount of time seeking to broker a satisfactory temporary solution for landing. And I know there are many issues unresolved. I do want to make it clear that Plymouth City Council supports our fishing industry and recognises its importance to the city. And we will continue to support the industry with working with local representative body, the PFSA and the Plymouth Trawler agents. We understand the works to the lock gates need to happen, but I need to say I'm really concerned about the impact that it's having on the industry. We have therefore asked both the Environment Agency and Sutton Harbour Holdings that compensation arrangements are clearly communicated to the industry as a matter of urgency so that our important fishers can have some certainty. Many of our fishers out of Plymouth are small business people, effectively. That is what they are. And those boats are their factories. And they need to be treated properly. Just a quick reminder that we're pushing ahead with our direct development programme and have now approved business cases for our industrial developments in the Freeport at Langage, for our new hotel development on Embankment Road. And last week, our first ever EV charging station at Outland Road, which I know is dear to Councillor Lowry's heart. It's worth remembering that the Economic Development team are currently working on £1 billion worth of development projects. And I know Mark's going to update you on some of those. And last week I had the pleasure of visiting the Barden Corporation, one of our key companies who you'll recall the council had a big hand in saving a few years ago when they nearly were sold. It was sold from underneath them, and the owner suddenly passed on his best wishes to the council because he still remembers what we did to secure that company. But as I keep saying to people, the company continues to do incredible leading edge work. Is a fundamental part of our sovereign capability, not just on Earth, but on Mars. And we hope to see more of that in the Book of Wonder when we do Volume 4 shortly. Thank you very much. So that's me done. I'd like now to invite members of the Cabinet to give updates, if I may. Who wants to go first? Sudan.
I'll just give a quick update on where we are with the cost of living campaign. We've shared lots of social media posts on mental health support, community food access map, helping people to find their nearest community large or food bank, debt advice, directing residents to face-to-face services and also online support, Healthy Start, which helps people who are pregnant or have children under the age of 4 with the cost of food and milk. And we've been promoting social broadband and phone tariffs for people on benefits. We've also been producing some newer leaflets which are more family focused, and these have been distributed now by community midwives through libraries and the DWP. We know that through the cost of living hub, most people are visiting the pages. It says help with food costs and help with energy costs. So over the next coming weeks, we'll be promoting things that to do with welcoming warm spaces throughout the winter, what they can do to reduce their energy costs, and also promotion for free activity during half term. We said it was a dynamic campaign and it's changing weekly. If Councillor Penberthy had been here, he would have also told us that today is the start of Household Support Fund Awareness Week. We've been given 4.5 million to use across the city to help people. More than 1.7 million of this has been used to provide food vouchers during school holidays to families with children who are eligible for free school meals. And we're also working with Citizens Advice to distribute £750,000 worth of food and fuel vouchers and essential household goods to really vulnerable people in need. On a slightly different note, we'll move to sport and leisure. We had an excellent sport and leisure conference up at the Life Centre a couple of weeks ago. We hosted Active Devon and loads of people from right across the southwest came, but it was also a really good opportunity to show Sport England the wonderful things that we've been doing in Plymouth, especially around Active Thrive and linking sport with active ageing, a thriving lifestyle, and what we're trying to do to get people to be fit. We have the Life Centre. Reese from Plymouth Active Leisure actually went up to London to a Swim England conference, and he was able to promote how much Plymouth has been using swimming, both open water and our swimming facilities, and how beneficial it's been to people's mental health. And I think this is a message that we need to keep pushing, because running leisure centres and swimming pools is getting expensive. But the benefits of having that, especially when we are a coastal city, is absolutely integral to what we do. We did say as part of the cost of living that we would be doing some lobbying of government. So we did write to government with a lot of other charities and organisations asking for a social tariff for energy to help struggling households during this winter. How many people have walked into the council house today and said, gosh, it's a bit chilly in here today? The weather has changed, and we know that over the next 6 weeks, people really are going to be thinking, do I put my heating on or do I feed my family? And so it is absolutely imperative that we keep lobbying the government to make sure that we get the right support to the people in the city who need it. On a different note, you may have not known, but cybersecurity was last week when I was away on holiday. And I am going to bring it here because this is something that affects a lot of organisations. We've had a couple of cybersecurity breaches in the council. We're spending a lot at making sure that we keep all our systems safe. But the thing we did during Cybersecurity Week was actually just share this with councillors and staff, because everyone's got a responsibility. And it also helps you not only your work life, but also your private life as well, to look out so you know when you might be scammed. You know, when you get these weird little emails saying, "Mum, I've got no money, can you send me £100? It is likely to be a scammer, and it happens in the workplace as well. But I just want people to know that we do take it really seriously, and we are investing in making sure that our systems are safe. I'm going to reduce my Brickfields update after you've answered that question, Councillor Evans, to the bare minimum, just to say that we have had the planning permission for our community hub. That's all gone through. We know that this is going to be an amazing sports venue for the city, but we are still got 2 more consultations to go. One's on the Stoke Dambrel hockey pitches, one is for the petanque, and also one for the actual sports pitches at Brickfields itself. So we are making sure that we go out and talk to all our partners and residents to make sure we get this right. And the last little thing, I won't talk about Fit and Fed after this, but I can remember at the beginning of the summer when I said that we will be providing something like 22,000 places for children's clubs across the city during the summer. Well, now I've got the final report, which is very, very long, but I'm not going to read it all out to you. Can I just say that the Sports Development Unit coordinated 84 holiday clubs across the city, providing, are you ready? 23,950 free spaces for benefit-related free school meals to children aged between 5 and 16 years. Now, that is massive, but that is just a number. But as part of their report, they worked with over 54 delivery partners. But can I just read out a couple of quotes from some of the people who benefited from it? Because I think it's when it makes you realise what it is we're doing within that 23,000 plus people. My son has had much trauma in his short life, and although he's chronologically 12 years old, he's emotionally so much younger. The Soapbox Theatre allowed him to make friends easily, something he really struggles with in secondary school. It's allowed him to be himself for the first time this week. This may not seem important for some people, but believe me, it is huge for young people like my son. The Fit and Fed clubs are a lifesaver. The impact on the rest of the family is actually immense. The 5-hour Fit and Fed sessions give my children some much needed respite. I really wanted to thank you for the Fit and Fed activities you provided during the summer. My foster son attended last week and absolutely loved it. My children had an amazing time with the Bounty Project. They were very fortunate to see wild dolphins swimming alongside the boat. Memories they will never forget. I think sometimes when we look at these figures, we don't realise the impact it has on some of those children and families when they can access activities which at any other time they would not be able to do it. So that's it. That's the end of my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's beautiful. Okay, I'm going to go to Tom next.
Thank you, Leader. Last Monday, October the 9th, we rolled out our new climate impact assessment tool. That means that all key decisions and those which require a capital investment business case will now systemically consider their climate-related impacts, including measures that can be taken to mitigate those impacts. This really is a crucial milestone in moving the council towards becoming a net zero organisation. The tool considers the indicative impact of a decision from 8 different climate-related perspectives, including biodiversity, emissions, renewable energy, water and air quality, materials and waste, climate change adaptations, and education and engagement. So you'll be presented with a traffic light scoring system, and members will be able to review the potential impact of a decision on those particular environmental areas at the point of decision making. This doesn't mean to say that difficult decisions may not occasionally need to be made, but they will need to be made fully cognizant of their likely impacts, and it will hopefully ensure that the highest mitigations will also be applied and that significant projects will be designed to minimise climate impact right from the outset, and that unintended consequences are picked up earlier in the process. I'd also like to congratulate our environment team on winning another prestigious award, this time for the Plymouth Natural Grid Partnership Project. The Gordon Miller Award is presented annually by the Countryside Management Association for an outstanding contribution to green space management. They were particularly impressed with the partnership aspect of Plymouth National Grid between PCC, National Trust and other organisations. I was also pleased to hear that 5 Kickstarters from a cohort of 15 went to work in the green space management sector, with 1 working for PCC in Central Park as a natural infrastructure assistant and 2 going on to work for the National Trust. Plymouth Natural Grid facilitated nature connectedness for over 2,500 people and started the ongoing Junior Urban Ranger programme, plus practical works on 9 PCC and 2 National Trust sites, delivering important biodiversity enhancements. Thank you.
Oh, that's great news, Tom. Well done to everybody involved in the award as well. Amazing. Okay, so next up is Mary.
Thank you, Leader. I have 2 announcements. One is just, well, I say a little one, it is a very important one. Today is actually Restart a Heart Day. And it's encouraging people to make sure they've learnt how to do CPR and on people and do that. And I think certainly from the council's point of view, we are going to be running some courses for councillors just to learn the basics of how you restart a heart. And that to me is important, because one of the things that we will be doing with the revamping of the Guildhall is to making sure there's a resuscitation unit over there so that people can take it off the wall if they need it. So it's important that we all learn how to do it, because you never know. So that's really a great day for us. And the second thing is, I had a nice visit a few weeks ago. I went down to the Clinical Diagnostics Centre, which is at the moment a porter cabin down in the Colin Campbell car park. And down there, they're doing CT scans. And it was a real pleasure. I went in just after the First Lady had had her scan, and she was over the moon that she'd been able to come there. She hadn't had to go up to Derriford and have all the wait, etc. up there. It's going to be great because it's there in the centre of the town. Well, I say the centre of town, so slightly west of the centre of town, but it's there in town. You don't have to get extra buses off to Derriford. And the facility is going to be able that GPs can put referrals straight into there. So it's shortening that time that people sit and worry about what's happening. And then the GP will be able to send somebody off for treatment if they need it, or just say everything is fine and reassure people. So I'm sure the public will appreciate the fact that it's in town, and it's going to be really great, as I say, for this early diagnosis and treatment for a lot of people. And they're working 7 days a week. They did say they might have Christmas Day off, but the rest is working 7 days a week. So I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Now, this is a temporary facility, as I said, and it's going to be superseded by a permanent building in the Colin Campbell car park. So I will hand over to Councillor Lowry, who can tell us more about what the next stage is.
I thought you were going to show us an exciting video. I'm not sure that's still the case at the moment. Would you like to do that first? That puts in context what Mary's just said, I think.
Hello, I'm Nikki Collis. I'm the Associate Director of the Future Hospital Programme at University Hospitals Plymouth. Today is a really important first step in our plans to redevelop our healthcare estate, and in particular to provide services that are easily accessible to our patients in their own community. And the important part of this project as well is that it will reduce the pressure on our Derriford Hospital site. The opening of this CT scanning facility is part of a wider scheme to build a community diagnostic centre here at Colin Campbell Court. We've already secured the NHS investment, we're working in partnership with Plymouth City Council on the design phase, and we will be opening it in 2025. The importance of building a community diagnostic centre in this location is that it's already been earmarked for regeneration. And we know that it's considered a relatively deprived area of Plymouth, and it's really important that we provide services that are easily accessible to our patients within their own community.
Hello, I'm Colin Stuckey. I'm the lead CT radiographer at Derriford. So CT scan is a diagnostic test that uses X-rays, shows us really detailed images of our patients down to about 0.5 millimetre in thickness, showing all the soft tissues and bones inside. This scanner is going to be doing all of our main CT scans, and it involves contrast, which is really exciting for us because it allows us to bring all groups of patients down here. I think the big benefit is the capacity we have. It gives us a lot more slots for our patients to attend. Also, it takes it away from the Derriford site, so it decompresses that. Having this here will allow us to have more capacity, reduce our cancellations, and give our patients a better experience.
I'm Mark Larry, I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance, and I'm also responsible for health and wellbeing hubs. So this temporary facility is in Colin Campbell Court, adjacent to what many of you remember as the old Habitat building. The new facility will be built in front of the Habitat building, going on to Western Approach, but that won't start until the new year. A massive new building costing us £25 million, and we'll be providing healthcare for in excess of 300,000 local residents. This is a temporary structure which will bring in a number of people into our city centre, but the main structure will go through its planning application process in November of this year and will start on site in earnest in the new year. From my perspective, what I'm really keen to see as this as a catalyst for regeneration of Colin Campbell Court.
I'm Mary Aspinall, and I have the honour to be the Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care on Plymouth City Council. I'm really glad to be here and opening the CDC this morning. It's going to make such a difference to the health of these people, particularly in the west of the city here. Travelling up to Derriford isn't easy, we know that. So to be able to come here to this place is going to make a huge difference. People are going to be able to be referred by their GPs, so early diagnosis after the test is going to be essential. We want to improve the health inequalities in this city, and this is one of those cornerstones to doing that. So I'm really looking forward to the impact it's going to have on our statistics about the care and the health of our city. So hopefully this will make that difference. And then we look forward to the bigger building over the next couple of years, which will improve life even better for people here.
So you may have recalled me saying that the planning application is ready to go and will be submitted before Christmas, and then the works will start in spring. And so there's in excess of £25 million of development in Colin Campbell Court, which will, as Mary very eloquently said at the end, will make a huge difference to many people's lives in that part of our city. I've got other announcements to make, but I'm happy to do those now if you wish.
Yeah, I think we'll go straight into yours now, Mark. Yeah.
So, it's no surprise to anyone that our city centre has been disrupted by a number of building projects over the past couple of years. We've seen significant delays, and one of the statements that we did say when we get elected that we'd get these projects going again, and I'm pleased to say that we have, and you'll see a lot more action in the city centre than perhaps you've seen in the past. So, Old Town Street and New George Street, this is a significant development, and phase one of this development, which is the area adjacent to the House of Fraser, will be complete and handed back to our residents and visitors and businesses, hopefully before Christmas. I have checked the programme today, been given some assurance that is exactly where we are. The next phase, we've issued the contract, and that is currently rapidly taking some further progress. So you will see further parts of that of our city centre handed back in the next few months. Just outside here, you will see the Civic Square Phase 1 and Phase 2 coming to a completion, and hopefully in the next day or so, the area will be opened up and the general public will be able to see some of the works that have been undertaken. It's important to thank our Historic England High Street Heritage Action Zone, because they provided the funding for us to undertake those works. So you will see some new beautiful stonework restored of the bow tie pattern, first featured in the Civic Square by Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe, which was in 1943, that has been restored. The paving around the pond has been relaid. New turfing is being laid near the pond to expand the greenery beneath the trees. And there's been plenty of new soil added to give nutrition to the trees and the landscape area around there. The concrete coping around the pond has been polished, and the pond itself will be refilled this week. And new shrubs have also been put into the planters, and the new coping stones have been repaired. So Phase 1 and Phase 2 come into a completion. Sadly, there is a small element of Phase 3 that still needs to be done, which is the inclusion of a psychopath area around or adjacent to the pond, and that will be done in the next few weeks and hopefully equally completed before the Christmas period of time, and that part of the city will be handed back to residents and visitors alike. But adjacent to that, of course, there's a great big civic building that's been there for a long, long while, but sadly we have not seen the progress we'd have liked to have seen. We've had a number of meetings with Urban Splash to establish a programme to take that project forward. And I'm pleased to announce that Urban Splash have recently signed a service agreement with their contractor to manage the construction works, which will be undertaken in a two-stage contract. The first stage being the external cladding and the roof replacement, and is programmed to start at the end of this year and is forecast to complete by the autumn of 2024. Then it's expected that we'll be able to unveil the new civic building, the external elements to it, and in parallel with that, we'll be undertaking some works inside the building, which will provide us with 144 new apartments to be created and some 50,000 square feet of commercial space beneath on the lower floors. So that alone is going to add tremendously to the sort of life and shape of that area, and encourage a lot more visitors to not only live in our city centre, which we want to do, but people to use the commercial facilities beneath. So yes, there has been significant delays, but progress is now rapidly coming forward, and those parts of our city will be able to hand back very shortly. Thank you, Chair.
Well, that's fantastic, and what a vote of confidence in our city centre as well. And it's good to see the council playing its part to inspire others to act. So on my list next is Mark Coker.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to when we first took over the council, the public transport team and myself engaged with the Department for Transport's bus team from London, spent the day showing them our plans and our aspirations for Plymouth. And I'm pleased to announce today that we've been awarded £1.6 million from the Department for Transport's bus service improvement plan for a 2-year period. The money will be spent on delivering our bus service improvement plan agreed between the council and our local operators. And I think the first two things to come out for it that I'm announcing today is that we are using this money as from Monday the 30th of October to reintroduce service 30 and 31, which was cut this year, cutting off a number of residents around the Drake, Hartley Vale, Manamede and Peveril areas. So this bus service will resume on Monday the the 30th of October. And also one of the pledges that we made were to bring back the Bothersand bus. So I can confirm today that next season, the seasonal bus to Bothersand as part of Plymouth waterfront aspirations will be returned to the people of Plymouth as we promised. There's a lot of work going to go on with the council and my bus champion, Councillor Sproston, over the coming weeks and months to look at how we continue to work with the operators to improve our public transport in the city. But I think after our 5 months in charge, to be able to reintroduce 2 new services is a really good start. So I thought I'd let everyone know, Chair.
Oh, that is excellent. That'll be great news for those residents in the city, but also the people who like to go to the Bothersand. That is a great reintroduction. So well done to you, well done to the team for securing that money and choosing how to spend it so wisely. Last but not least, Jemima.
Thank you, Leader. So I'm going to start with a reminder that on Sunday, 5th of November, Plymouth Hoe will be lit up with a spectacular bonfire and firework display. The fun starts from 4 p.m. with fairground rides and food and drink, and the bonfire will be lit at 7:30 p.m. and the fireworks start at 8. We know the cost of living crisis is impacting on many Plymouth families, and we wanted to help people to enjoy themselves for free or at low cost. And this is why we decided to bring back bonfire nights for this year, which people can enjoy for free. And I'm really grateful to Plymouth Waterfront Partnership for agreeing to sponsor the event. The autumn show opened in the box this weekend. The Dutch Flower exhibition brings 10 spectacular Dutch flower paintings. They really are some of the finest examples of that genre, of that work, from the National Gallery, bringing them to the box for the very first time. And also the End of Empire exhibition by Yinka Shonibare in the North Hall opened as well, which is really striking, and I just recommend everybody to go and see them when they get the chance. Councillor Bridesdelve and I were fortunate to be at the switch on of the incredible installation Love is the Highest Economy of Life a couple of weeks ago, which is on the Civic Centre, and if you've been around in the centre of town or even a little bit further out over the past couple of weeks, you won't be able to miss it. It's using the words of the celebrated poet Ben Okri, the Nigerian-born British writer. His words are illuminated in the Civic Centre's windows and can be seen widely across the city. I was on North Hill the other night and you could get a really, really clear view from there. It was created by the artistic collective Still Moving, who did the No New Worlds installation. I think it's absolutely stunning, and we're currently liaising with Sir Ben to welcome him to Plymouth while the installation is here. And there's a really great article in The Ecologist today about it, in which our very own Councillor Bridesdelve is quoted, because the point of this work and Sir Ben's words are highlighting the climate crisis. And so, yeah, it's on between 6 and 9 a.m. in the morning and 4 to 11 p.m. In the evening. And as I say, you can see it from parts of the Barbican, North Hill, and in fact, the further away from it you are, the better it is. I think it's stunning, and really thrilled that we've got it here in Plymouth. And I had the privilege of being asked to introduce our new Plymouth Laureate of Words at a ceremony at the box. A couple of weeks ago, 2,000 people voted in the poll to decide who would replace Laura Horton. She had a fantastic 2 years in that role. She really raised the profile of Plymouth culturally, regionally, nationally and internationally. And the Laureate of Words for this year, 2 years, 2023 to 2025, is Rosemary Corlett. And it was wonderful to hear her read her poem. She's a wild swimmer, about those feelings you have when you're in our blue spaces, when body and mind meet water, and the transformative effect it has. So those are my announcements. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Jemima. Well, we have got a lot going on, haven't we? And it never ceases to amaze me exactly what is being brought to the box, you know. I mean, we are on the map, aren't we? And, you know, and it's free. Go and see it. You know, we made it for you. Okay, well, that seems to be all the announcements for today from the Cabinet. So I'm going to move on to item 8 now, if that's all right, which is corporate plan performance Q1. So in line with the scheme of delegation, as Councillor Penberthy's not here, I'm doing it, but I don't want to do it because Mark Lowry will do it better. So will you do it, Mark?
I will try indeed, Leader. I should say Councillor Penberthy is not here, and I know Ross, who is here today, has done a lot of work with Councillor Penberthy to make this report reflect the things that interest us as an administration. So when we got elected, we made some commitments that we would do certain stuff. And it's important that those commitments are reflected on our corporate plan, and it's equally important that it's reflected in our measurement performance targets. So for instance, we talked about we would tackle crime and antisocial behaviour, we'd be filling potholes, we'd be creating cleaner streets, building new homes, green investment, and better access to healthcare and dentistry. So those important elements that were manifesto commitments by the Labour Party are now reflected in this corporate plan performance report going forward. And it gives us an opportunity to demonstrate our delivery against our manifesto commitments, which I think is incredibly important. However, in addition to that, the report you have before you today is in respect of Q1, which doesn't mean a lot to everybody when I use those words, but it means April, May and June of this year. And you will recall that the Conservative administration were in charge for a large part of that period, and only in the latter month was the Labour Party responsible for this corporate plan. So it covers 2 administrations, and as I've said, we have changed it to include 51 indicators now to measure the council's performance, and it includes an additional 10 indicators that are a consequence of our own administration. A few areas to highlight in the report. In the first quarter, the number of early antisocial behaviour interventions has increased by more than 50% from the previous quarter. We've also seen a marginal decrease in the number of children with repeat child protection plans. However, there are some significant challenges going forward, particularly in respect of homelessness. We can see that rising significantly, and the impact on our ability to deal with this can be clearly seen from the performance report. And I know from my work with Councillor Penberthy and officers, this is a key priority for him and our administration to ensure that we do our very best to provide people with a home to live in. That's all I wish to say in this report. It will change considerably more going forward because Councillor Penberthy is doing a lot of work around ensuring that our performance is transparent and visible, and we can use it as a means of measuring and taking the necessary action we need to correct our performance where it is going wrong. But it won't surprise you to see that there are some significant challenges going forward for us to address in the coming year. Ross Jago is here as the officer responsible. He may wish to add to some of my comments.
Ross, is there anything you'd like to add?
Other than just to reflect Councillor Larry's comments around further development, the indicators that you've got in front of you, 25 or so of them are new. So we are having to do some extra work just to identify appropriate comparators and look at different ways of presenting this information to you as well. So for example, some of the quarterly indicators we have only moved by less than a percentage point each quarter. So we're looking at how we might extend that time series so you have a better view of how that's occurred over a number of years. We're also looking at new indicators. So for example, around the safeguarding priority, it's really rightly focused on vulnerable adults and vulnerable young people. But of course, our responsibility is much wider than that, and will include health and safety of the public and so on. So we're looking at additional measures around there. We're also reliant on some partnership measurements. So in particular, our primary access to primary care. So we'll be using some NHS measures. And as you'll be aware, they structure themselves slightly differently geographically. So it just takes a bit of time to pull that context out. So lots of changes coming forward, working very closely with Councillor Penberthy on developing the report. We had a good outing at Scrutiny in September, who were very supportive of the approach. So we'll have a new report for you very soon, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Ross. So reverting back to me now, I think. Oh, you want to come back? Yeah, sure.
Just wanted to raise the issue of dentistry, because you'll be aware that under Councillor Aspinall's stewardship, the Labour administration have set up a dental task force. Because I'm sure Councillor Lang will remind us that there are 22,000 people on the waiting list for dentistry, which is huge. And we, as an administration, have been aware of that, and we have taken action, and Mary has set up a dental task force in which she's holding all the partners to account. She's also very kindly invited members of Parliament from across our city to attend those meetings. Hopefully, those members of Parliament that have the ability to make an influence will do exactly that. But it is being led by Mary, and it's through her, hopefully through her hard work, that we may see some significant interventions in dentistry that will make a difference in our city going forward. So, manifest of commitment, but Mary and the team and officers alongside her did a tremendous amount of work in dealing with that issue, and I'd like to pay tribute to her hard work, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a point very well made indeed, Councillor Lowry, and we look forward to receiving more updates from you in due course. If anybody can hold people to account, it's Mary, that's for sure. Okay, thank you. So basically, this report's just for noting today. So can I ask us to do that? Agreed, I think. Yeah, that's really good. So I'm going to move on now to item number 9 on the agenda, which is the we were going to have an update. I wondered, Councillor Cresswell, can you provide us with any update on this at all?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I can, and I have a statement to make. Thank you. Plymouth, as you know, had a local area SEND inspection, that Special Educational Needs and Disabilities inspection, led by Ofsted and CQC, which is the Care Quality Commission, in late June 2023. The outcome of the inspection was that there were serious weaknesses identified with 5 priority areas that need to be addressed through a local area action plan. The inspection endorsed the Council's long-term plans and directions of travel for the local area partnership and multi-agency work, and areas of positive work were recognised in the report. However, concerns were raised about the provision and outcome for children with SEND, including those who need multi-agency support and those most vulnerable. The detail is actually set out in the report. The report indicates that there are joint actions for the partnership. Plymouth City Council, NHS Devon, ICB, schools and college leaders to take together, as well as some specific actions for Plymouth City Council Children's Services and the NHS Devon ICB. The report was published on the Ofsted website on the 22nd of August 2023. A meeting for PCC and NHS senior officers with the DfE was held on the 11th of September 2023. The meeting noted progress so far with partnership work to develop a response to the report. it was put forward that an externally chaired board was required, and we have received a draft notice to this effect from the Secretary of State. Once finalised, the notice will be published. The plan in response to the inspection was submitted on the 3rd of October. It's had input from a wide range of stakeholders. Parents, carers, and young people themselves have been involved in articulating the outcomes they and we need to see. A stakeholder event, including colleagues from schools, children's services, the education psychology service, and the health services, was held on the 20th of September at the Guildhall with over 120 attendees. And I have to say, informally, I've heard some very, very positive feedbacks from that. A crucial aspect of taking forward the work will be articulated in the plan is the involvement of school and college leaders. School and college leaders, including head teachers and CEOs level, will need to be involved in the key governance and working groups. The DFE are well aware of the role of and the support of the involvement of schools and college leaders in order to make sure that we move forward and have a real impact. Following the submission of the plan, the work will move further forward and communication, engagement and governance arrangements. Early work on aspects of the plan with early delivery dates will commence. We have received some positive feedback on the plan from the DFE when it was submitted, but we haven't yet had response from Ofsted. We await this feedback before finalising the plan. So, an executive decision will be made shortly as a consequence. The plan ensures there is a clear oversight of the impact of the partnership on children, young people and their families. Quickly identifying children and young people who are vulnerable and risk negative outcomes. To reduce the likelihood of pupils with educational healthcare plans, that's an EHCP, being excluded from school. To address long waiting times for children and young people who need support from health services. Risk assess children on waiting lists for health service, prioritising those children with multiple needs. To ensure that children and young people with SEND who also have social care needs receive the care and the support that they need. To improve the consistency of support offered to children and young people in schools and settings. To provide all practitioners across social care, health, schools and settings with the training they need to provide consistent education, care and support. And to plan ahead to ensure that the right services and support are in place to meet the future needs of children in Plymouth. My own personal view as well is, especially as having been a teacher and at one point a special educational needs coordinator, is that children and young people are at the very heart of this plan, and their voices must be listened to as we set out to deliver these improvements. And I would stress that that's not about lip service, that's fundamentally what I believe should be the case. Our priority is for children and young people in Plymouth to be supported to grow up well, to achieve and to thrive. It's absolutely crucial that those with special educational needs receive additional support so that they reach their full potential. As a partnership, we are all committed to making improvements and rebuilding our trust in services as swiftly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. David, you're sitting there in front of a crowded Plymouth Hoe. Have you got anything that you'd like to add, please?
I think Councillor Creswell has covered that really well in terms of the current position that we're in. I am in conversation with Ofsted to get the date that I expect the report to be approved by them, and as soon as that report has been approved by them, then we can move forward to make the executive decision for approval and publish the action plan within the timescale that's set out. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, so basically we'll note your verbal report for today, and then the next time we meet, you'll report to us on what you have done in terms of executive decision. Yeah? Lovely. Okay, thank you very much for that. It's an important piece of work. Do you mind if I say, though, there was a protest last week by a number of parents of SEND children protesting about the way in which SEND was implemented across the region. But there were people from Cornwall and Devon. You went out to meet them?
Yes, it was a national a national vigil for SEND, and it was right across the country, but the sort of regional people came here to Plymouth. So we had both, as well as Plymouth, we actually had people from Exeter, from Devon, from the South Hams, from Torbay, and also from Cornwall as well. And I have to say, I went out and spoke to them and spent a long time talking to parents and carers, both here outside of the council chamber, and also they went up to Ballard House as well, where I spoke with them again, and with several of our officers, and they had they were. It's very difficult. Parents are in a position where they are battling for their children, and they feel very, very emotional. And it was important that they were able to vent and express their feelings. But we spent a long time talking and listening, and we took back various issues which I have passed on. And I think the upshot of it all was that people felt very much that we had listened, and they were particularly pleased that we were there as Plymouth City Council, and of course there was no one else from any other council being represented to actually speak to people. But I think our presence was actually very much appreciated, and people left feeling much happier than when they arrived. We might not have been able to have solved every problem, but what was very clear is that we are very much a listening council, and we hear what's being said.
That's great. Well, thank you for taking the trouble to do that, Councillor Cresswell, because it's important that parents know that we're on their side. Okay, I'm going to move on now to item number 10. And we're going to be joined at the breakfast table. In fact, we are joined at the breakfast table by Emma Crowther, Laura Lawrence, who wrote this report, and James Stannard as well. And Mary, I think you're going to introduce this report.
Yes, please, Leader. Some of you may not know, but we actually have 89 care homes for adults within Plymouth, which support adults who have nursing or residential needs. Our current contract for these services are due to expire on the 31st of December this year. Our care home providers work tirelessly to support our citizens, including all the way through COVID. And we are very, very grateful for their commitment and support. Before we can put new contracts in place, we need to make sure that we have the right type of provision locally to meet the future needs of our citizens. And we are to take this into account, and we have to take a whole range of other factors into this, such as the fair cost of care and our rising need for homes which can support adults with dementia. To give us time to do this properly, we are proposing to extend the current contracts for 12 months. This will allow commissioners to work closely with our providers and those who live in our care homes to engage, listen, and to use this information to build our plans for the future. We'll also work really closely with our health providers, including NHS Devon ICB, the University Hospitals Plymouth, and Live Well South West, to make sure that we are working as a system around some of our most vulnerable citizens. And of course, this also feeds into our project of ageing well in Plymouth. So important work to be done, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary, this sounds like one of those ones that will take a while, but it'll be worth it when we get there, right? So, do any of you wish to amplify what Councillor Aspinall said? Yes, Emma.
Thank you, Leader. So yes, we absolutely recognise that our care home providers haven't had to take part in any type of procurement before. We want to make sure we work with them really carefully to guide them through the process, because it can be complex, even for those of us who do it all the time. We're also aware that we need to make some really significant changes to the types and numbers of care home beds that we commission, both for the local authority and health clients. And we absolutely recognise we don't have the beds in the right place for the future now. And this is particularly true for our clients with more complex needs, including dementia, as Councillor Aspinall said. We also need to make sure how we use those beds needs to link up really effectively with hospital discharge, particularly for those who need more support. But we're absolutely conscious we need to do this with respect and care during the next year. And you know, I like to bring the people with me who actually do the work. So James is our care home business improvement partner, and Laura is a care home practitioner. And they are the ones that will be working really carefully and closely with our care home providers on their quality, their fees, and their plans for the future. This was Laura's first business case ever, and first time at Cabinet, so she's very nervous, so please be kind.
So what we're doing is we're going to try and nudge some of these care homes in a different direction, but we're going to do it with them, not to them. Is that the sort of main thrust of the paper?
Literally that, yes. So we have, we think enough beds, they're not necessarily in the right places, but we don't want to just, as you say, Leader, push people into directions that aren't the right one for them and aren't the right ones for us. So that's the bit over the next year. And there's the technical aspects. So procurements are as they are. And we need to make sure people are ready for those, properly prepped, so we give everybody the best possible chance.
It sounds like one of those things that's easy to say, but actually making it happen is kind of really quite tricky. So this time's going to be important. But I mean, in terms of what the gaps are, I mean, you know, you talked about beds in the right place. Do you mean geographically, or do you mean in terms of the kinds of services that we want those care homes to be providing in the future?
It's more the balance of needs. So we're quite well served with the geography of the city, but it's more about we've got almost too many general needs beds and not enough at the more complex end. And with our ageing population, and Councillor Aspinall touched on it with ageing well, we have to have the split right. And we've got providers that have delivered for many, many years one type of provision, and we need to help coax them into another area. So it's doing that really. The plan will be to come back to Cabinet with a detailed plan of what we intend to do. So this is the kind of permission to extend and permission to do that work, but we'll come back to you with the detailed plans of what the future will look like.
That's lovely. Any questions from people, Mark and then Sue?
I think you sort of, we know from the plan that we reviewed the other day, there's something like a 16% increase in over 85s going forward, a significant increase in that sector of the population. And obviously that will have a huge impact on what you're planning to do. This is an extension of existing contract. But planning for that trajectory going forward and that demand is quite a challenging task in itself, isn't it? And making sure we get it right. But equally, like you say, there's a bit about nudging, but there's a bit of it might be a bit more fundamentals to that. And I would encourage us to think about partnership arrangements where we actually engage, because that market has a direct effect on the budget. So you won't be surprised me to raise that as a subject matter. So I'm keen personally to understand that direction of travel going forward, so we can not only nudge, but maybe make some significant interventions with those people to ensure that we do have the right beds that we need going forward, and thereby reducing the direct cost on the council. So I would welcome being engaged in that process, please.
Absolutely. This is our opportunity to really grip and steer the future of that market, exactly as you say, Councillor Lowry, in line with what we're realistically going to need and be able to afford for the future as well. So this is absolutely it. This next year is crucial to that work and getting that right. There's also something about the span of ages that our residential care homes care for as well. If you're 85 plus, you're likely to want a different type of provision to someone who's 45. And we need to make sure that this provision can age well with people as they go through that life journey as well. So there's an awful lot to think about.
To ask what would be the timeline for the new contract? I know when it comes into being. For how long will it be into being?
We don't know yet. We would like to try to be able to offer longer term contracts to providers so that they can have the stability for their workforce. But we need to look at what's the most realistic and practical and affordable option that offers us the best quality care as well. So we don't know. We're leaning towards longer contracts, but that's not necessarily a given. But we'll come back with those recommendations.
Thank you. Sue?
I've rejigged my question there, as Councillor Lowry asked the same sort of question I was going to ask. I suppose the next question is, are we going to have the skills capacity to deliver? Because having spoken to a couple of residential homes, and they talk about the distinction between being a residential home and a home that offers nursing care, is being able to access the right staff to be able to fundamentally be able to deliver that service. And we do know that there are pressures in the system. So is that going to have an impact as well?
Absolutely. We need to look at the whole position in the round. I was out with one of our care home providers last week, having a really frank face-to-face one-to-one chat. And that was exactly some of the issues she was highlighting to me around the sustainability, the skills, and the importance of her staff feeling confident to care for our elderly residents and our younger residents in all circumstances. So workforce development and sort of capacity building will be a key component of this plan. We can't do this without the staff, and they need to feel safe and confident to do the job that they do. So absolutely, that will be critical. And we know there are skills gaps there, not as a criticism of the workforce, but just because as the provision and the need has evolved, we need to make sure we are keeping up to date with that and offering opportunities to work with those providers to help skill staff for the future.
So I suppose the question to follow up then, are we also working with the skills providers?
That will be a key component of the plan, absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. So we've got quite a lot of detail, not least on how we actually got to this decision today. So when we come to the next phase, there'll be a matrix, and yeah, it'll be a much more substantive paper than this one, which is already very good. Anyway, thank you for the paper. Mary, is there anything you'd like to say in summing up at all?
I think, Leader, it gives us the opportunity to get the best out of what we want for our people. And of course, it isn't just older people. We have younger people that need this sort of care as well. So it's making sure that we get the best out of the market for them as well. And I'm looking forward to the work that comes out of this so that we can all have a look again and see what's proposed. And really the recommendations are there, and I'm hoping that you will be happy to support the fact that we extend this contract for the 12 months. Well, yes, 12 months, so that we can get the best out of it for our population.
Okay, so a simple job today for us, which is to approve the business case. So can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your work so far. We look forward to seeing the results the next phase. I hope that wasn't too bad for you. Okay, we're going to go to the last item on the agenda today. Kat Deeney's joined us. For the interestingly titled Plymouth Habitat Bank, although my notes say I should say the habitat banking vehicle business case, which is actually what it is at this point. Anyway, I'm going to ask Councillor Brysdale to introduce it. All over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to start with the state of nature, which some of you might have heard being discussed very popularly on social media over recent weeks. That is the most comprehensive report on UK biodiversity recently published by leading conservation charities. And it paints quite a stark picture. It found that here in the UK, 151 documented animal species have already become extinct. And nearly 1 in 6 of all of our animal species are threatened with extinction. That's not some exotic creature in a distant rainforest. It's here and now, the grim reality of the ecological emergency in what we'd all like to imagine is the green and pleasant land of Great Britain. So nature recovery must be at the heart of what we do as a council. As outlined with the previous announcement on the climate assessment tool, we will now be assessing and mitigating the impact of development on green spaces. However, we also need to be strategically working towards nature positive across the city, helping both species and ecosystems recover and thrive. The 2021 Environment Act sets out that from January, slightly delayed, developers will need to show a biodiversity net gain of at least 10% and a 30-year maintenance period. Unlike most councils, we're ready for that. The habitat banking vehicle that you mentioned, Leader, that concept is a way of ensuring that when on-site improvements aren't sufficient, we can help them as a council funnel that investment into enhancing nature in Plymouth's green spaces, not somewhere up country. Ocean City Nature, which is the council-owned collection of companies that will run this vehicle, has already been set up. But today we're asking Cabinet to invest £500,000 as a loan in a very ambitious pilot. This will be used to enhance nature on 3 council green sites in a measurable way in line with DEFRA metrics. The improvements, and this is where it gets a little bit technical, the improvements are theoretically split into what is known as biodiversity units. Essentially, it's a tradable token that can be sold to developers who will need to show that they have developed a certain level of biodiversity net gain. Whilst the above may sound legally and financially technical, let's not lose sight of the huge benefits this could bring. It is hoped that this UK leading pilot will show the viability of the habitat banking vehicle model as an effective means of channeling millions of pounds of funding into local green spaces. We want Plymouth's fields, woods and wetland habitats to benefit directly for the sake of our nature and our communities. Done right, the habitat banking vehicle could be our best opportunity to give nature recovery in Plymouth the helping hand it desperately needs. The co-benefits are even wider than that too. As the Dasgupta review states, our economies, livelihoods and well-being all depend on our most precious asset, nature. On that note, I'd like to pass over to Kat if there's anything additional she'd like to add.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to mention, Chris Avon is also online for any questions. You very adaptly followed most of my points on the first slide, but I think the main thing to pick out is the biodiversity net gain policy is a national one. That's not anything we can change locally, and it will come into force in January. But what we've tried to present in the habitat banking vehicle locally is a local solution to that has the greatest benefits, not just for local nature, but also for local people. So the biodiversity units that we want to create will make sure that they are developed in the city and ensure that that nature stays close to people. So the benefit of having our own group of companies as the habitat banking vehicle is that we can make sure we're ready for this new requirement that comes under the Environment Act, but also to make sure that we run the pilot in the city close to where people are, which is the way that the Section 106 has always worked, aka there may be impact from development, but that's mitigated locally. We want to make sure with this new system, we keep that nature close to people. Next slide, please. So this gives a hopefully simplified description of how it works. So Basically, the investor, and in this business case proposition, that is the council, provides a loan to the Habitat Bank, which is the family of companies we've established. That Habitat Bank will use that investment to create units. That's the tradable currency, if you like. And then that will be sold to developers at a market rate that will then go back to the Habitat Bank, who will pay the investor, aka the council, back again. So it is a circular movement of that money, and the biodiversity creates the unit of currency. The benefit that's different from the existing Section 106 is the biodiversity net gain requires a 30-year maintenance period, whereas previously it was 10 to 15 at the most in terms of the money paid. And the 10% net gain in biodiversity, although we've had a net gain policy in Plymouth well ahead of nationally, will require further amounts of biodiversity to be created than previous. So there is a lot more benefit here, and by keeping it in the city, we can benefit nature and people. Next slide, please. We talked about 3 pilot sites, so we just wanted to show where those sites are geographically around the city. We have tried to spread them to different parts of the city, but also incorporating different habitat types, as that's a requirement to be able to provide developers with the service they need. Because obviously one of the benefits of having this ready is there be no stifling of development in Plymouth by this new act, and that's really important. The other part is because the habitat vehicle is owned by the City Council, if there are issues with viability on things like affordable housing, we have an ability to review that with those providers and ensure we get the biodiversity, but we don't hamper other required infrastructure like affordable housing. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of all the financial details that you've got in the business case. So it shows how that 500k will be drawn down in terms of mostly around developing the biodiversity unit. So this is physical on the ground works in those 3 sites to create the biodiversity. The OPEX side shows how that will then be spent. And as you will see, the biggest cost of all really is the project maintenance, and that's because of the national requirement for a 30-year maintenance period. But includes things like infrastructure costs, because one of the things you have to do when you're doing urban biodiversity net gain is ensure that people are part of that solution. So we've looked at infrastructure to keep people near nature, as well as all the other costs you'd expect for running this, like insurances and the management costs to the council. And as we've put at the bottom, the income generated is basically each unit has a sales price. It's averaged at 25,000, but that has in the model got built in things like inflation. So that will increase. And obviously one of the things that will come as this starts to take off early next year is we'll start to see what the market price is. Obviously the government have set out their statutory prices, which are a lot higher, but what we want to try and do is balance making sure we give developers a way for meeting their statutory duties, delivering biodiversity, but not stopping other infrastructure coming through with regards to planning. Next slide, please. And the biggest thing we're trying to do here is use the Environment Act requirements that will be enacted in early 2024 in a way that means that we keep nature close to people. Doing nothing would actually mean a loss in money for nature in the city, because Section 106 was what we've used before will no longer exist for nature investment. We want to build in enhancement of maintenance for those sites for 30 years, but also the infrastructure improvements. So this is definitely about keeping people and nature together, and ensure that we drive forward with a national pioneer, but is really maximising local benefit. Thank you.
So I heard on the radio a couple of months ago that the UK is one of the world's worst for biodiversity, and I thought that can't be right. Green and pleasant lands. That's something I genuinely thought, that cannot be right. So Tom and Kat brought this to me to discuss, and I was like, guys, is that really, really true? And it actually is true. Actually, we're in the lowest 8% of the whole wide world for biodiversity. Shockingly bad. But my question is, you talked about the company, you talked about the money, you talked about the sites. For the rest of us, what does that mean in respect of what might we actually see on the ground that changes my view of what I thought was a green and pleasant land, but clearly isn't? So, what would I see as a normal person entering any of those environments? What kind of improvements might I see?
I'll just start off and then maybe Kat can jump in to clarify. So it completely depends on the site. And as Kat mentioned, we've got 3 very diverse sites that have been selected here. So, most of you will be familiar with Ham Woods, for instance, really popular patch of woodland, footpaths running through it, used by dog walkers, used by families. And so every single site, the planting involved in it will depend on that. So, whether it's a shady woodland, whether it's a wetland habitat, we could be talking about trees, we could be talking about various types of flowers, we could be talking about shrubs that are more applicable for a wetter habitat. But all of these are positive natural resources that the communities will be able to notice. And the point of this is that it's impacting biodiversity. So along with those positive things that our communities are desperate to see, we'd also want to be seeing that thriving animal life coming from that. So pollinators, birds, butterflies, should be able to far better thrive in the environments that this will allow us to create across the city.
And will you be able to measure that increase potentially at some stage?
So like we've been talking about with biodiversity on some of the existing projects that we're working on as a council, every single type of planting that is involved, the metrics that are consistent with DEFRA work are linked up to that. So it gets quite complicated in terms of the data side of it, but yeah, all of that is calculated as part of this. And then it's a matter of giving that a financial basis based on those calculations.
I've just heard what you said about diversity. I'm struggling with that a lot. If you've ever been to a desert, it would indicate that it's teeming with life compared with the UK, which maybe it is. This is quite interesting, isn't it? So we're absolutely sure, are we, that the government, who are rowing back faster than Sir Steve Redgrave in the Olympic race on net zero, the Environment Act's not going to be altered in its tracks. It is happening. Everything's going according to plan and according to timetable.
I can't fully comment on what the government will do, but as much as we've heard, we had the DEFRA Green Finance team came for a visit last Thursday and Friday, and as far as they're concerned, it's still going ahead. All the guidance is coming out. They're certainly gearing up for it. I think with this particular one, it was more they weren't ready rather than it's part of the collection of things that are being really pushed back. And I know, we're in a good position, but a lot of local authorities are kind of sort of hurrying to catch up to make sure they're ready. So everything is looking positive, and there's certainly no noise that this is going to be pushed back any further.
Sally?
Just wanted to pick up on something. My understanding then is that it's going to be by extending and developing the flora, the impact then it will have on the fauna and on the animal life. And coming back on a point about how is that measured? How do you actually see the impact? And I can imagine that isn't always terribly easy to measure, primarily because you actually need to have quite a lot of people there to actually measure it and and actually record the different species. I'm thinking about the national bird watch that happens every year, isn't it, in which we actually motivate people right across the country to actually record number of species over that weekend. So is there then the possibility of engaging, and I'm thinking it's something which could be quite fascinating to engage the public to be involved, especially as we go further down the line, of actually recording on a voluntary basis of the increasing number of species that you would be hoping to see?
Yes, you're right. So the way the metric works is for grassland, for example, you'd look at the number of floristic species, not everyone's cup of tea in terms of crawling around and looking at which types of grass and flowers, but that is how we can monitor definitively where the biodiversity is in terms of quality. And we'll absolutely want people engaged. I mean, one of the things with having the sites that we've chosen, apart from Chelsea, the other two are fully public access, and we want people to feel ownership of those sites and be really happy that they have that ability to engage with nature, to be proud that their site is improving, and that the money's there to maintain it to a good level. So in addition to the physical infrastructure, so the paths, etc., that we want to make sure are upgraded as well, we definitely want the community to feel part of it, because ultimately they're the ones that will look after it.
I could see a wonderful opportunity here to involve schools and such in what is potentially a fantastic learning opportunity, as well as providing you with the necessary data you need to show that there has been an impact.
Absolutely, and I mean, isn't it amazing that someone that would start maybe when they were doing reception could do that for 30 years to see the difference over that period of time.
Thank you. Councillor Dan? Well, I think it's very exciting. I think, when we passed the climate emergency a few years ago, we also, not long after, passed the ecological emergency things as well. And I just think this builds on what the city's been doing for a long time. I mean, all the things that we've been doing in our green estates, the Green Minds project, the community forest, working with the National Trust, we've got such a strong delivery partnership now on making sure that as a city, we really have reflected well the work that we've been doing in trying to increase the city's understanding of green and blue spaces, and to have money actually in the pot to be able to develop this, not just for a 3-year project, but for a project that can last a generation, I think is really exciting. Yet again, I have to say, Plymouth is at the forefront of this because it is innovative. And if you look what we're doing with the National Marine Park as well, who knows that, in the future we might have to be able to do habitat banking in the sea as well as in the blue, as well as on the green. And I just think it gives us an amazing opportunity to keep the city with that 40% green for nature and expand on it and build on it in a really managed, diverse way. So I think it's really exciting. I think, when we look forward to what it looks like in 10 years' time to where we are now, I think it's an amazing opportunity, and I think, it's good.
If I could just respond briefly to that, I think you're exactly right. I think this builds really nicely on from Green Minds, the 60-40 engagement work over rewilding, and you're exactly right that this is another example of Plymouth being the leading light in this. I was at a UK 100 course on the weekend in Bristol. 20 councillors from up and down the country, and some of the most ambitious climate councils, and Plymouth was mentioned because of the habitat banking vehicle by one of the panels, Natural England. They mentioned 2 councils, and Plymouth was one of them because of this, and it's something that other local authorities will be looking to emulate. So yeah, glad you're as excited as we are.
I am.
Marvellous. So we're ahead of the pack. Let's stay there. That's good. And Chris, is there anything you wanted to add to what you've heard?
Thank you, leader. No, nothing to add. I think just to kind of echo the sentiments there. There's this, it's a really exciting project in terms of the platform this gives us to support all this wider work, which we'd be looking to do around habitats, biodiversity, but particularly linking with the communities in the city. So it's great to hear the support in the room.
Excellent. Well, we're all excited by it, I think. I think it's fair to say. All that remains then, I guess, is for us to put the recommendations to you, I think. David Northey, I presume you've been asked and you said yes enthusiastically. Nobody had any hold anything to you?
I've shared my enthusiasm.
There we are. I can see it. It burns brightly. And so all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Just to say to you, though, Tom, the LGA Labour Group are currently looking for entries into the next edition of the 100 Innovations of Labour Councils. So this would seem to be a rather good case for that. So if I could have, as soon as possible, please. Well, yeah, and the absolutely the dentistry stuff. I think this would be a really good opportunity for us to do that. Maybe we could have a chat about how we get your dentistry action group in there as well, okay? Anyway, that's all we've got today. I've only got another hour to sign these minutes. I've got to sign every page of these minutes. Does anybody... Apparently somebody might try to tamper with it or something. I'm not quite sure. This goes back to medieval times. Yes. Another... Anyway, goodbye and we'll see you next time.